Hi, Jeff.
Hey, Claire.
I'm such a fan of like the bookshelf with the meaningful things on it as a backdrop. I need to make that happen in my own life.
Well, truth be told, my my office was a total catastrophe for like a year. Because I would come in here, I would do my work, and I'd leave, and I'd never pick up after myself because I'm like, it's go time,
Right,
and it's
right,
either
right.
I'm either gonna clean or I'm gonna work, and I was and then it's like in between. Times of work, I'm hanging out with the family. So it was like, well, I'm going to maximize this time. And so finally I just got desperate and I texted a friend of mine who does some local assistant stuff. And I said, hey, I've got this big bookshelf. Like I had this, no, it wasn't a bookshelf. It was like a big giant, like closet. Like this is like 200 square feet, maybe less. And it was like half of it was filled with this cabinet that was taking up so much space. And so I basically asked a friend of mine if she'd be willing to redecorate my office and then just get rid of the crap. And I told her about this story about somebody on my team. I just had all these emails piling up,
Yeah.
and I had like 8,000 emails in my inbox.
Nice.
And I said,
Wow.
yeah, right. And I said, if I just hand you this laptop on a Friday, and I pay you for overtime over the weekend, and you just like if you have time to do it, she said, yeah, I have time to do it. And I asked her if she wanted to have some more work. She said, yeah. And I said, and at the end of the weekend, you just hand me the laptop back, and all the emails are gone. Like I just trust that they went someplace good.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the weekend, she handed it back to me. She said, there's 35 emails in here that you need to respond to. I filed the rest. They are archived. You need to respond to these 35 emails. I said, okay. And so when I asked somebody to sort of renovate the office, I said, I just want to give you the keys on Friday,
Yep.
and I want to come back on Monday. I don't want to know where the papers are. I don't want to know where all the crap went to. I just want it gone, and I want to be able to come in and do my work in peace. And I came back to this wonderful thing that you see. So all that to say,
I mean, that's
yeah,
how I love working. Wow. Just
I know, me
I don't
too.
even want to know what happened. Just make it better.
Make it disappear like you're a cleaner for the mafia. I just want the problems to go away.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah,
Okay, let me
right.
just, I think most folks watching this already know all about you, but I'm just going to go ahead and read this bio because that's,
Cool.
like on my to-do list. So
Good.
we'll just do it.
Great.
Jeff Goins is the author of 4 books, including the national bestseller, The Art of Work. He is also a full-time blogger, speaker, and entrepreneur. Originally from Chicago, Jeff graduated from Illinois College and spent the next year on the road with a band. Not something everyone can say. After that, he moved to Nashville to chase a girl and spent the next 7 years working at a nonprofit. He now writes and speaks for a living and runs an online business helping writers and creative entrepreneurs chase their dreams. Jeff's award-winning blog, Goinswriter.com, has been visited by over 4 million people from all around the world. His work has been featured in places like The Washington Post, USA Today, Entrepreneur, Forbes, and Psychology Today. He and his wife, Ashley, live just outside of Nashville, Tennessee, with their 2 kids and dog. And you're in a new home, a relatively new home, right?
Yeah, we just moved across town. We live in Franklin. We moved across town back in September.
Sweet. All right, so I'd like to just kind of start out just asking you to give kind of, I don't know, a bit more flavor to those 3 short paragraphs I just read, right? I mean, how did you get to this place where you were at a nonprofit, you wanted to be a writer, and then now you're at this place where you can hand someone the keys to your office where you do good work in and you get paid to do that work and then come back on Monday and have it be better? And yeah, how did you get here?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's really hard for me to hand over control of something like my office and go, look, fix this thing that I literally feel inept to fix. Or with shame, I hand my laptop over to a team member and go, I should be more organized. I should be a better leader than this. I feel shame. But I'm actually learning to just own the fact that I'm not great at a lot of things. But I think I'm good at maybe 1 or 2 things, and I'm giving myself permission to do those things well. And it's not to say that we don't all have to do things that we don't want to do or don't feel particularly talented at certain seasons of life. And I'm doing some of those things now. But there are some things where I'm going, I'm not good at this. I'm learning to like myself, even in spite of the things that I'm not good at, and I'm willing to let go and be who I am. And so all that to say, my journey of becoming a writer was really that process of that. It's becoming who you are, and I'm really into this right now. Before we started this, we were talking about Parker Palmer. I love what he says in Let Your Life Speak. Before I can tell my life what I want to do with it, I need to listen to my life telling me who I am. Mm-hmm. Now, Claire, you and I are planners. We like to-do lists. We like checking things off. We like making things happen, ambitious, driven. We've got a plan. I've always had dreams. I've always had things that I wanted to do with my life. And it's like a very American thing to do. And before we can do that, Palmer says, we need to listen to our life, telling us who we are. And so at the end of my 20s, I felt anxious. I was starting to succeed in this nonprofit career. Success in the nonprofit world does not mean money, but it means status. It means responsibility. Every year I was getting promoted. I was a marketing director at this growing organization. I was helping us grow every year. We were doubling every year, and it was a lot of fun. It was exciting. I was doing something that I never thought I was good at, which was marketing. And in the back of my mind, I always thought, wouldn't it be cool to be a writer? But I never, ever, ever, ever considered that a possibility. Like, to me, that was like catching a unicorn. So to say that I wanted to be a writer is I mean, I wouldn't have even verbalized it because it was just such a ludicrous notion. But at, sort of approaching my 30s, I was 27, 28 years old, and I was thinking, okay, like, I've done a little bit of life. I'm supposed to be a grown-up now. Why do I feel all this angst? Why do I feel like something's missing? And so I started going to conferences. I started reading books. I started talking to people, inviting mentors into my life to just give me feedback. And I started listening to my life, as Parker Palmer said. And what ended up happening was, through a series of discoveries, which kind of culminated in this awakening for me, I realized I was supposed to be a writer. And all that really means is that for most of my life, in one form or another, I had been writing. When I was a kid, I used to draw, and I would make Garfield comic strips. I would copy them from, the newspaper, and then I would turn those into like comic books. And when I was a teenager, my dad taught me how to play guitar. And so I started a band, and I started to write songs and play shows. And my favorite part in all of this was the creation process. It was making something seemingly out of nothing. And then in college, I was a religion and Spanish major, and I would get so stressed, and I didn't have my own computer, that I would escape during finals time when you're supposed to be studying. At like 1 o'clock in the morning, I'd leave my dorm room, I'd go to the 24-hour computer lab, and I would write. And I'd write these stories, and I'd email them to myself because Dropbox didn't exist then. And that was my escape. I remember hearing Elizabeth Gilbert one time say that writing was her home. It was the place where she felt like herself. And, home is not a place, it's like a state of being, right? Mm-hmm. And so that was true for me. Writing was my escape, but it was never the thing that I wanted. It was just the thing that was always there. And I think that's actually not a bad definition of calling. The thing that you're supposed to do in some ways is the thing that's always been with you in some form or another. And I realized all these things that I'd been chasing in my 20s. I was a traveling musician for a while. I became a marketing director. I did these different things. They all had this theme. They're very different, but they also had this theme, which was creativity. I liked telling stories. I liked doing new things, and I liked sharing my ideas with the world and watching them spread. So, yeah, I was at this conference, and I was talking to this guy, and he asked me what my dream was, and I said, I don't know. And he said, oh, really? And he just met me, and he said, because I would have said that your dream was to be a writer. I said, oh, yeah, I guess I'd like to be a writer someday. He said, Jeff, you don't have to want to be a writer. You are a writer. Wow. You just need to write. Wow. And the next day, I got up, I started writing at 5 a.m., and I did that for an entire year. By the end of that year, I had this blog. I had a publisher that wanted to publish me, and about a year after that, I had replaced my income and my wife's income. We both quit our jobs. I started this business and started writing books and helping writers and do all that other stuff you talked about in that lengthy bio.
So I remember I have this incredibly clear memory of, I guess it must have been like 4 or 5 years ago, of sitting in a very nice restaurant in Washington, D.C. by myself with the advanced reader copy of, I think it was Wrecked at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just like staying in that restaurant for like 3 hours, paying way too much because I kept ordering drinks, and just like underlining everything and loving it. And
thanks.
So first of all, awesome work. I love your books.
Thanks.
But
Thank you.
also to bridge that into a question, a lot of people say, go out and figure out what you really like doing as a child, if you want to kind of figure out how you can, be a little more happy in your life today, right? And some people might say that you deciding you wanted to be a writer really had nothing to do with you deciding you wanted to turn that into a career. In contrast, I mean, you have Tribe Writers, which now this is this online course and system that thousands of people have gone through. And it's not just about teaching people to be writers. It's also teaching them to be writers and make that actually part of, their job and their work. Right. So I don't know, how can our passions pay? Or is that just like a misnomer to call it a passion once it starts paying you?
Yeah, well, there's lots of schools of thought on this, as I'm sure you're aware. Some people are just like, chase your passion and the money will follow. That sounds really nice, but, we've got kids, like I've got responsibilities, and that just sounds a little bit irresponsible. And I am the dreamer in our family. Like I'm like the person who's going after like the big idea, and my wife's like, slow down, how's this going to work? And so when I started this, I'll say this, I came home after going to this conference, and I told my wife, I had like written it in the notebook, right? And I said, look at this. I'm supposed to be a writer. She's like, duh, what do you think I've been telling you all these years? And I was like, oh. So I was in denial, and sometimes the people closest to us see things in us that we fail to recognize ourselves. And so I realized this was in me, and I think that's a really important first step. Like if it's in you, you have to do it. I'm not saying you're guaranteed success. I think that there are lots of ways to succeed, in the world today. Chasing a passion, the internet, technology makes lots of things accessible in ways that they've never been before. So I'm hopeful, but I think it begins with like, is this in you? If it's in you, you have to do it. My friend Clint says that the definition of a calling is something you can't not do. I think that's a pretty good place to start. Like, what is the thing that you can't not do? Call it a passion, call it whatever. Start there, then figure out a way to do it. Do it so much and so often that you get good at it, and then get so good at it that you can find a way to contribute something to the world that's valuable to other people, and then find a way to get paid for that. So what that looks like practically is, I think it's not one thing. I think it's three things. It's, think of it as sort of like a Venn diagram where you've got these three different circles. And, other people have done this in different ways. Michael Hyatt talks about this. I've seen Scott Belsky talk about it. But I just call this the three circles exercise. And in the middle of those three circles, there's going to be like an intersection where they all kind of fit. So circle one is skill. What is the thing that you're good at? What are you good at that not everybody else is good at? Circle two would be passion. What do you love doing? That's important. And then circle three is demand. Passion, skill, and demand. Demand is, what do people want from you? Derek Sivers says, what's obvious to you is amazing to other people. We all have something that's obvious to us that's amazing to others. So when I set out to be a writer, I thought, well, writers don't make any money, so what should I do? Well, here's what I've been doing as a marketing director, and then I became the communications director at the organization. Basically, what I do all day long is I teach writers how to communicate the message of our brand to our audience. What if I took everything that I've been doing for 7 or 8 years and just put it on a blog and see if people cared about it? And so I did that. And in fact, I started a blog, and I tried to be Michael Hyatt. I tried to be Seth Godin. I tried to be like the thought leader guru guy. And nobody liked those blog posts. And then when I wrote about writing and what I was learning about the craft, like people responded to that. 4 people responded to it instead of 1. It wasn't a lot, but it was something. And I said, wow, maybe there's something here. Maybe there's resonance. And so that was that demand. Passion, skill, demand. When I encourage folks to, quote unquote, chase their dreams, I think about it practically, because the truth is you can have a passion that you're good at, but if nobody cares about it, it's just a hobby, right? And you can have something that people want from you. There's a demand for it. Maybe you're even good at it, but you do not love this thing. You don't even like it. Yep. Well, that's a day job. That's drudge work. Yep. So I think the trick that we all have to find is we got to figure out things. What are things that we're passionate about that we can actually get good at that meet some sort of demand, some sort of need in the world? That will not be all of your passions. It will not be all of your skills, and not all of the things that the world needs from you should you respond to. But I guarantee you there's something that fits all three of those questions, those areas. And that intersection is a pretty good indication of something that you should spend some more time figuring out. So that's part one of my answer. Part two is everybody I know who's doing this, you, me, everybody, like they don't just get paid to do one thing, right? Like I don't get up and go to my office at 9 a.m. and write, and take a lunch break and then write and go home at 5 p.m. and like somebody slides a check under the door. No, it's a bunch of different. I write books and I sell those books to publishers, and I coach some people and I do some consulting and I teach people through my online course. And to be clear, I love all of that stuff. And for the longest time, I felt like a failure because I wasn't just making a living off of my writing. And then I realized most people I know who are successfully living their dream, they're doing this. They live what I call a portfolio life. And it's this idea that you're not just one thing, you're many things. And you don't have to be a jack of all trades, but you can become a master of some. And the truth is, we're not robots. Most of us have multiple interests. We like doing different things. And what if all of those areas of life intersected? And that was your work. That was your life's work. That was your calling. That was your dream. And they all kind of work together in an integrated way. I think now more than ever before, and so I'm grateful that you're doing this, we have power over the portfolios that we create for ourselves. So in some ways, we've always lived portfolio lives. We've had, like things that you do at home, life with your friends, hobbies, your day job. But now we get to create our portfolios. And there's really interesting research that came out about this not too long ago. Forbes published a study about it where they said that by the year 2020, not too far from here, in America, and there's global trends that are following this, by the year 2020, over half of the American workforce will be freelance.
That's amazing.
They will have more than one gig. Wow. They will not have day jobs. They will have multiple gigs. In other words, to quote a business philosopher by the name of Charles Handy, in the future, he said this in 1989, very prophetic. He said, in the future, we will all be what he called portfolio people. And I love that. So yeah, it's an inevitability. You better start planning your portfolio life today.
So in an average portfolio, let's say, you're suggesting that all of those things are things you like doing, but some of them are things that maybe pay more than others.
Yeah. I mean, I think everything needs to fall into that passion, skill, demand. But, that's a decent sized middle circle. So it's not everything's going to be a bullseye. So there are things that I really, really love doing that pay decently well. So I just started this coaching program, and it is it is 5% of my income, right? So it's not a big part. I'm spending a lot of time coaching 13 people through this year-long process. Why am I doing this? Because it's fun. It's amazing. I'm having a blast. I'm getting to guide people's trajectories. I'm helping them launch their dreams. It's incredibly rewarding, and I'm getting paid for it. But it's very different from launching a $500 or $1,000 online course. You press a button and money comes in.
Right.
And both take work. Both, I'm passionate about. Both meet demands, and I'm good at both of them. But that's an example of, a portfolio. And so in a given day, I'm doing a smattering of these things. And then I'm working on a book or an article or something that isn't paying the bills right now at all.
Right.
And so I think all of those things fit together in, a really important way.
So I want to ask a little bit about kind of this difference between passion and commitment, or how these intersect. And you have a quote in one of your not recent book, in Wrecked, where you say, when the passion goes away, it's the practice that sustains us. This is the fruit of commitment, the reason it's worth the hardship. When you commit to something, anything, it allows you to practice what you love, right? So I want to understand if commitment is really just another word for saying those things that we don't really want to do, or the things that get stale. Does this mean when I get excited about a big idea and then I sort of don't get excited after a few weeks of doing it and realize that it requires a lot of like uploading to Dropbox or something?
Yeah, right. Yeah, so I don't think so. I don't think commitment necessarily means you don't want to do it, because like you committed to your husband when you married him, right? You gave him a vow, and that was a commitment. True. And yet, if your marriage is anything like my marriage, sometimes you go, this commitment doesn't feel as good as I thought it would feel right now. It requires something of me. I just think commitment requires something of you. And I continued this idea in The Art of Work too. So in that book, I talk about finding your calling, and I talk about this process. But what's interesting about this, because I interviewed hundreds of people who had found their callings and identified some commonalities, some themes. And one of the themes was, you would expect the process to go like this. This is what I expected. And this is the story that I told about my own experience for a long time. You figure out what you want to do, then you go do it, you work really hard, you succeed, and then you tell other people how you did it, right? And the truth is, for most people, the discovery process didn't happen at the beginning. It happened somewhere in the middle. And you began with some vague awareness, listening to your life. What am I supposed to do? Then you committed yourself to some sort of cause. Usually, I call this an accidental apprenticeship. It's usually some sort of informal relationship with somebody you could be following online that has no idea who you are. It could be a group of friends that you meet with once a week to learn from. It could be an online mastermind, whatever. It's some sort of group of people that you're learning from. And over time, through that commitment, you gain experience. This is an apprenticeship, right? That you then apply to your own journey. And at a certain point, you go, okay, like I've mastered enough of this skill that I can commit more to doing this professionally. And that moment that we call the leap happens in the middle, not at the beginning. I think most leaps actually look like bridges that we build, not leaps of faith that we take. I spoke with a couple who moved from the United States to South Africa to Burundi, which, as you may know, is the world's second poorest country. And they moved there to start a coffee farm. And like a lot of places in Africa, coffee is a commodity. So, you've got all these poor farmers growing this thing, and in many ways kind of getting taken advantage of. And so they went there to live with these people and to advocate on behalf of their rights and just help them get fairer wages for their work. And so I asked them, I said, how did you guys end up here? They're the Carlsons is their name. And I said, how did you guys end up here? They said, well, we took a leap. I said, interesting. Tell me what that's like. How long did that leap take? They said the leap took 10 years. That is a slow motion leap. But isn't it interesting that this is the language that we use to describe radical life transition, about what it means to find my dream, discover my calling, do my thing. We took a leap. It took 10 years. That's not a leap. That's a bridge. So what does that mean? How do you build a bridge? How do you take a 10-year leap? Well, I think what you do is you try to cultivate a sense of awareness, and then you look around your life right now and you look for opportunity right now, and you commit yourself to some sort of cause. I call it a seasonal commitment. Doesn't mean you commit for the rest of your life. You go, I'm going to choose this thing for, a year or two, or maybe 3. It's not like a month. It's not a week. It's something that requires something of you. It has to be a long enough season in life that there's a dip where you go, I wonder if this was the right choice or not. In those moments of commitment, when you're in the middle of something that you said, I want to do this, and then I'm in kind of the messy middle and it's not fun anymore, that's when you grow. That's the job of an apprentice. The job of an apprentice is to say, I don't know how to do this. I'm going to go into the studio of a master. I'm going to sit under his or her feet, and I'm going to wash dishes. I'm going to mop the floor. I'm going to hold the chisel. I'm going to do not the cool stuff, right? But by being in that space for so long, I'm going to learn. I'm going to get some of that on me. We don't have this in our culture, in most cultures, in most vocations. We don't have apprenticeship anymore. I was fascinated to learn that the average apprenticeship in the Middle Ages or in the Renaissance lasted 10 years,
Whoa.
right? 7 of those years, 70% of the apprenticeship is grunt work. You were the apprentice. You were in the studio helping the master do work that usually he put his name on, and you didn't get any credit. Then you become a journeyman for 2 to 3 years. You leave the studio, you travel around the country, you practice the craft, and if you're good enough, you make something, and you submit it to the guild. You come back from your travels, you submit it to the guild, and you go, here, I made this thing. They called it, if the guild said it was worthy of being admitted to the guild, they called it a masterpiece. It was your masterwork. And if it passed their inspection, you went from journeyman to master. And at that point, you get to take on apprentices and start the process over. That's a 10-year apprenticeship. I guarantee you at like year 6, when you're like shining the master's shoes, you're going, why did I commit to this?
Yeah.
And I wish we had more of that in our culture. I wish we had more of that when people are chasing dreams. They thought of it as an apprenticeship, not a get-rich-quick scheme, not a life hack, right? That they spent enough time around mentors, around people that they were learning from. Again, it doesn't have to be formal. You don't have to sit in somebody's studio. It's probably not going to look that way, but you just spent enough time immersed in a commitment. And maybe you don't even know what you're trying to discover, but you're in that and you're getting some of it on you. Through that process, you figure out, oh, this is where my passion and my skill and the world's need, this is where they combine. Now I'm going to go out and I'm going to try my hand at this in the world, and I'm going to do this enough that I become great at it, and then I come back and those people who were once my masters, once the people that I was looking up to, my mentors, they become peers and they go, yeah, you got what it takes. Welcome to the club. That's how I think this should work.
I love it. Thank you so much for this, Jeff. Can you tell people what you're working on now and where to find you? And Wednesday lunchtime, Nashville.
Come to Franklin. The caveat to that is, there may be a line. You may have to wait, or you may not. So the book, The Art of Work, has done really well. It's continuing to do well, and so I'm continuing to beat the drum on that. I had so much fun writing this book that I'm writing basically a follow-up to it, kind of like the next step of the process. So if The Art of Work is about finding out what you're meant to do, the next book is about building a career around that and really making a living off of that. And I think you can do both, and I'm excited about it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This was great.
Thanks, Claire. It's my pleasure. Thanks.